He engaged a room there, and as a matter of fact, I spent, I believe, one night there with him drinking a couple of bottles of scotch to keep herself alive, while she was a question of give or take.
And I must say that Erich is marvelous. He lived with me in the hospital, and the first bouquet, of course, I couldn't see because my eyes were dripping with blood, burned, and was from Joan Crawford. She was one of my neighbors. Beautiful white basket of flowers. I had a room full of flowers.
In a desperate move to raise cash, von Stroheim was reduced to acting at studios like Mascot and Republic, producers of grade B westerns and melodramas.
I know you did it, and I know why you did it. You couldn't explain. Explain that! Explain! Go on, hit me. I don't care. I still say you poisoned him. And you murdered him. You can't beat that out of me. You can't shut me up. You murdered him.
Murdered? Poison? What do you know about it?
In 1935, I was head of the story department of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and in charge of the writers as well. And Von came in as a staff writer. His mind ran toward dramatic situations. It ran toward sex. He was marvelous at coloring and embroidering character. He could give you wonderful pieces of business for the director. And I think that von Stroheim required money, and it was anything but moving down, which others may have thought he was doing, by coming on the writing staff. He gave great contributions within the office, in the conference, that would go on, and then probably someone else would go off and write. I won't say that he didn't want to write, because I'm sure he did, and the point is that he did turn in a script that was bought by the studio.
General Hospital. Emergency? Disaster call, railroad smash-up.
All student and graduate nurses off duty report immediately.
The master director and famous author, Erich von Stroheim, again has endowed the screen with a story of epic proportion. No namby-pamby romance this. It leaves to other pictures the flimsy plot of the philandering intern and the pretty nurse, and chooses the fresher, more vital theme of the rise of a great surgeon, his sacrifices, his mistakes, and his triumphs, and his quest for the one woman with whom he has his one chance for happiness.
When he was working at MGM, one Christmas Eve, I got a telephone call from him, and he said, hello, and of course at that time it was told to Beverly Hills, and I mean, these calls were a little expensive. And he says, I want to say goodbye. I says, where are you going? He says, I'm going to commit suicide. I says, what, commit suicide? Why? He says, you know what happened to me? He says, John Farrow and some other director, Bob Leonard, came in with a basket with money and a beautiful engraved chart signed by everybody on the lot, wishing me a Merry Christmas. He says, and I won't take that. He says, I don't want any charity. He says, they don't have to feel sorry for me or something like that. I'm going to commit suicide. I said, well, Eric, will you do me a favor? I said, before you do it, will you let me drive out there? I want to kiss you goodbye before.
So when he came, he said, well, Eric, he said, would you leave Valerie as disfigured as this with Joseph and just take the easy way out? And he said, no. We wrote each person a letter with a check. Some of those people returned the check. Clark Gable returned it 3 times. And I must say, the man that kept him out of work, like L.B. Mayer, his name is on the scroll.
Hollywood offered charity, but no more chances to direct. To support his family, he would have to go elsewhere.
He had a fortune teller in California, and he was very dependent on her, and he got an offer to come to Paris. I'd say this was in late, maybe during 35, and he was in very bad state. He didn't have a job. He had no prospects. His wife had been ill. His son had been ill, and he went to see the fortune teller, and he said, I've had this offer to go to to Paris. She said, wait, I see in the cards that you'll have another offer that will bring you great fame. You'll have another career across the world. Well, he's dubious about that, but he did refuse the offer. And a few months later came the offer for him to play the German spy in a picture which was called Martha Richard, who was a French espion agent. And that's how he came to Paris. And then, of course, everything opened up. The next film was Jean Renoir wanted to take him.
Jean Renoir came to approach him to participate in The Grande Illusion. There was one part on one side of a German flyer at the beginning, and the picture went on. And then at the end, there was another part of a German, of a prison warden in a military fortress. And these two didn't have any connection whatsoever. And Erich thought that it was not good for his career to accept either one of the parts because they were really too small. He thought and thought and found a way of linking the two parts. When he got in the studio the next day, what he had was a complete corset. When you saw the man with this, you knew that he had been shot down, that his neck was broken, and it was the whole explanation in one frame.
Croyez bien que le métier que je fais à présent me repugne autant qu'à vous. C'est vrai. J'étais un combattant. Maintenant, je suis un fonctionnaire, un officier. Mais c'est le seul moyen qui me reste encore pour me donner l'air de servir ma patrie.
Je crains que ni vous ni moi ne puissions arrêter la marche du temps.
Voyez, je ne sais pas qui va gagner cette guerre. La fin, quelle qu'elle soit, sera la fin de Rothenstein et de Boieldieu.
On a peut-être plus besoin de nous.
Et vous ne trouvez pas que c'est dommage?
Peut-être. J'admire le soin que vous prenez de votre géranium.
Ne croyez pas que je sois devenu botaniste, mais c'est la seule fleur de la forteresse. Il ne pousse ici que du lierre et des orties.
When he walked on the set, Renoir just, kissed him, embraced him, and said, "Ah, Erich, there's only one person in the world that really thinks picture. And you have done something fabulous for the film." And actually, I mean, that was really a find because everybody remembers that silhouette of that man with the prothèse. From that moment on, Erich was the superstar in France.
Von Stroheim not only found a new career in Paris, but a new life and a new romance.
I was trying to start a career as an actress, and I usually got some little jobs through the agency, which also handled Erich in London, who was his agent at the time for Goldin, who said, "Look, you've got to go to the Claridges, and there you'll see Erich von Stroheim." When I arrived, von Stroheim just sort of, looked me up and down. You felt totally naked. And then took my hands and said, "Well, with a better color of nail polish, I think you will do." And I said, "Do what?" And he said, "Well, first of all, take that letter." Well, that was quite a problem. Then after that, it was answer everything for me. Rewrite my, I have written this dialogue in English, you've got to rewrite it in French. There started our collaboration, so to say. He realized that I wasn't afraid of him, whereas practically everybody around him was. And he had a tremendous amount of work to be done, and nobody had the courage of going through it. I became strictly a von Stroheim object, that is, working morning, noon, and night for Erich.
working in France, of course, there were a lot of fly-by-night companies then, and the weather was quite different than Hollywood. There were studios, but they didn't belong to any. Nobody signed for a studio. They signed for film. And a great many of these people were none too honest, and he had been warned about this, maybe by his fortune teller. And he always demanded, before, in the morning, when they started, he demanded $1,000 a day, which would be something like $5,000 now, I guess, and a bottle of whiskey before he would go on the set. Then they would use him for, say, 5 or 6 days in a film and use his name, which they used an old trick, you know, and say this was starring him because his name was a great draw at the box office.
He played a Chinaman in Les Pirates du Rail, and he did look really Chinese. In one film, he had been badly burned, so he wore a half mask. In another one, he played a French couturier with a sort of a goatee and white hair. Erich never could just be indifferent about anything that he did, and even the smallest part was of great interest to him. In Sacha Guitry's Si Versailles m'était compté, he played Beethoven, and he really managed to look like Beethoven. He used to take a portrait of himself and then draw eyebrows, draw a wig, draw mustaches, and finally found his looks. But mostly he was inventing himself a past.
Do you remember me?
How could I forget you?
Colonel Matthesius. What a disguise. I didn't recognize you.
Neither has anyone else, I hope. Won't you sit down?
I switched from being a producer to being an agent. I opened my agency, and one of the first people that I tried to get to join me was Erich von Stroheim, who at that time had been in Europe and made some films in Europe. The first film for which we brought one over was a Fox film, I Was an Adventurous. Once he was here, there was quite a lot of demand for him. At that time, they made a lot of anti-Nazi films, and there was always a role that von Stroheim could have played. We tried to pick and choose, but once in a while, one had to do some films which he better might not have made.
I wonder, could I use it to kill?
He played some very interesting pictures while he was here, particularly the film 5 Graves to Cairo, which he made with Billy Wilder, and then, of course, Sunset Boulevard.
With considerable irony, Billy Wilder cast von Stroheim as Max von Mayerling, a great silent film director now reduced to working as butler to his former star, Gloria Swanson.